Okay, so hey, welcome back to the evening. Chop, 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 chop. Right? You know the move. Chop, 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 chop. So you might have noticed I started painting. There's some paint trays on my table there. That's that's some paint trays. I started painting, and it's not as glossy, the patchy, as it used to be, and all the paint in the background's blended a little bit. So what I did was I took the paint. The paint on here is actually the original paint is flat. It's not glossy at all. So I took the new paint that I had bought, and I diluted it with a TPS. You know I mentioned earlier I was gonna wash it, and TPS is gonna take the glaze off. So this time I just poured a little bit of paint, then I poured TPS in it, and now the glaze is gone. So see in the back, it used to really, it's still a little bit wet, so you can see it, but it used to be really like the patch stood out, but now it's really blended in because I took the glaze off the paint, and then I painted over the sheen basically, and I did that all over my house. So now this is sort of like close to what it originally looked like when I moved in and I had professionally painted. It's this gray. I wish I didn't have to rent it, but when I get a job in New Jersey, I'll rent. So okay, so okay, I'll tell you guys something, right? Chop, chop, chop. Back in the day, I used to I didn't start the website, but I used to contribute some articles for a website called Martini Boys, and Martini Boys is like a kind of like Time Out, Time Out magazine, or it's kind of like it's not a Gothamist. It's more like a Time Out magazine. It's kind of like guys about town reviewing cocktails, reviewing bars and nightclubs. And there was Martini Boys Toronto, Martini Boys Montreal, and Martini Boys Vancouver. So the founder of the website um, had like it was that early version of like you know a review site, and he got the website into like um, Rough Guide and Lonely Planet and all that stuff. So since I was going out a lot, I would write reviews for those clubs. So nowadays and at the beginning when I started sharing again, you know, I was gonna write seriously, like really good prose, but I kind of got sick of that because I just want to be my natural self, right? But I want to be like inventive as well. So tonight's blog video clip for my blog, The Culture Proof, right, is called "Fortunately, Unfortunately, Not for Whom the Bell Tolls." So I'm gonna read an excerpt from the classic book by Ernest Hemingway, "For Whom the Bell Tolls," right? And it's kind of like watching somebody read, right? Like a reading, right? So after I just painted my house, right? All right. So I don't know where in the book this takes place. It's just some website with an excerpt. So I'm just gonna start reading it. So this is Ernest Hemingway, "For Whom the Bell Tolls." If he had known many men have had to use a hill to die on it, it would not have cheered him any for. In the moment he was passing through, men are not impressed by what has happened to other to other men in similar circumstances, any more than a widow of one day is helped by the knowledge that other loved husbands have died. Whether one has fear of it or not, one's death is difficult to accept. Sordo had accepted it, but there was no sweetness in his acceptance, even at 52. Sorry, 52. with 3 wounds and him surrounded on a hill. He joked about it to himself, but he looked at the sky and at the far mountains, and he swallowed the wine, and he did not want it. If one must die, he thought, and clearly one must, I can die. But I hate it. Dying was nothing, and he had no picture of it, nor fear of it in his mind. But living was a field of grain blowing in the wind on the side of a hill. Living was a hawk in the sky. Living was a earthen jar of water in the dust of the threshing, with the grain flailed out and the chaff blowing. Living was a horse between your legs and a carbine under one leg, and a hill and a valley and a stream with trees along it, and the far side of the valley and the hills beyond. Soto passed the wine bottle back and nodded his head in thanks. He leaned forward and patted the dead horse on the shoulder, where the muzzle of the automatic rifle had burned the hide. He could still smell the burnt hair. He thought, I gotta move it down a little bit. I'm glad y'all enjoying this reading very much. To continue on, he thought how he had held the horse there, trembling, with the fire around them, whispering and cracking, over and around them like a curtain, and had carefully shot him just at the intersection of the cross lines between the 2 eyes and the ears. Then, as the horse pitched down, he had dropped down behind his warm, wet back to get the gun going as they came up the hill. Eras mucho, caballo, he said, meaning, thou wert plenty of horse. El Sordo lay now on his good side and looked up at the sky. He was lying on a heap of empty cartridge hulls, but his head was protected by the rock, and his body lay in the lee of the horse. His wounds had stiffened badly, and he had much pain. He felt too tired to move. So that's a little bit of Ernest Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls. I'm glad you enjoyed this segment, video clip for the Culture Proof. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.